Every day, I'm kind of a dickhead. I am not the definitive voice on relationships, trust me. Wouldn't it be great if we never died? There's no really good way of sugarcoating that. It's just a pile of Do we live in a capitalist hellscape? Let's find out. Hello, welcome to another episode of Agony Lena. If you haven't been here before, Agony Lena is a cosy little series on my channel where I answer your agonising existential questions while taking you somewhere new, going on a walk once we went to a really weird museum. But today, we're just in a standard field. So the first question that we have is pretty pertinent to the whole theme of this series, so I thought I'd answer it first. How do you have the confidence to offer your advice without worrying that it's wrong? Well, I do. Every day, I'm kind of a dickhead, but people seem to enjoy these videos, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my imperfect, sprawling thoughts, and you're going to decide whether they apply to you or not. Can we do that together? I actually find the most helpful advice is the advice I don't agree with, because it helps me clarify what I actually want and believe. So take these with a pinch of salt, and let's get walking. So the next question is, and I really like this one, why is earning a lot of money important for me? I don't even like having a lot of stuff. Kind of relatable. I do like some trinkets. I do like some 50p bargain bin cardigans. But I do know what you mean, where it's confusing because you feel like maybe you have these like left-wing values and you don't care about consumerism, and yet those fantasies of like winning a lot of money or doing something that you're proud of that also happens to accidentally pay a huge amount of money is really, really tantalizing. And I'll tell you what I wrote in my notes, because I kind of laughed at myself. I must have written this quite late last night, but I agree with myself. Why is earning a lot of money important for me? Because basic necessities are at luxury prices and you do not trust the state. So the problem is with basic necessities, they're often not cheap, and we are these flesh puppets that need space to exist in, like all the time. And really, I think something like a house, which is arguably priced at a luxury price, is a basic necessity. So the fantasy of being rich is actually, I think, for a lot of people, the fantasy of having enough. And because we don't trust the state, and because in a lot of other countries, thankfully in the UK we have the NHS, also just survival is expensive. I don't think blaming, I think there's a lot of rhetoric around like the general public being drawn in by the American dream or like by the dream of capitalism. But I don't blame a lot of those people because so many basic things are so expensive. So I think in my head, trying to channel all those fantasies of buying silly things into one very basic fantasy, which is owning a house of my own that nobody can chuck me out of, i.e. mortgage free one day. And that's not a fancy house, just somewhere that I can exist and it's not illegal, shouldn't be something that you judge yourself for. Does that make sense? But then at the same time, knowing when to stop with that, like where would you draw the line? What do you think is too rich? What is too much? And then sticking to that. Now I'm only 31, so I have that point in my head, and I hope that I'll stick to it in the future. And I hope that having thought about it now and made a little judgment call with myself now, I'm not going to become one of those people that I, at this point, think are being kind of wasteful and a little bit prickish. Do you know what I mean? Excluding sex, what is the difference between your best friend and your romantic partner? I have so many thoughts on this, and it's something that I think is different for everybody, because every relationship is different and everybody's preference on what a partner is different. But I'd say that I wrote some midnight notes that we're going to expand on. Best friends exchange notes, romantic partners are on your team. So I think that with a lot of my friends, it's really fun because we'll often go off and live our own lives, make our own choices, however varied and different those are, and then we'll come together over a drink, sitting on the sofa, and we'll exchange notes on what we've done. We'll look at each other's papers, give each other advice maybe, or just generally revel in telling each other stories about how our lives are going and how they sometimes overlap. A partner, I think you're intentionally overlapping your life with them. You're living your life with them, you're on their team. If they're in trouble, you're in trouble. If they're celebrating, you're celebrating. And it's not that you can't have that with close friends, but I think it's that intentional thing that makes a partnership like a little bit more distinct from your friendship. I can't be mad if my friend wants to move to another city without me or makes other friends, but with a partner I feel more like that's something that would like fracture the agreement, I guess. So I think it's kind of the premise of relationships, which are more accurately I think called partnerships, which is why I like people are using the word partner a lot more for the person that you're with, because it kind of demonstrates more like how like plaited your lives are. And I think that sometimes can demonstrate why a relationship is breaking down, even though there's not necessarily anything wrong with it. You're just not on the same team. You're not going in the same direction. You're just two people comparing notes a lot. So that's my 2 cents on it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because I am not the definitive like voice on relationships. Trust me. This question made me think a lot. Is heartbreak? They agree. Is heartbreak existential? This sounds like an 8-hour wine conversation, but basically, yeah, you have a point. In the same way that I think grief is existential in some ways, not only because the real grief is that you love that person and you'll miss them, just like with heartbreak, you love somebody and you're going to miss them. It also, with grief, it kind of reminds you that you are mortal, that everything ends, that death is scary. And in the same way with heartbreak, I think they are kind of comparable. Sometimes I think we don't take heartbreak as seriously as we take grief, even though I think in a lot of ways we're experiencing the same things. It's reminding of our own possibility to be alone, the idea of loneliness, how what we think could happen and what actually happens are often really different. So our kind of like understanding that we can't really control the future or understand the present properly. And it also reminds me as well of another question I was asked around like losing your faith. There's somebody who wrote in and was like, I'm losing my Christianity and it really scares me. And I used to be a Christian, and I like one of the ones that actually believed it, if you know what I mean, like I was really in it. And I think again, like part of the pain there was a shift in basic reality. Like there are certain like assumptions that everybody builds their life on, and when those are pulled from under you, it's very scary. And I think often very similar in the way that our bodies respond to it, even though they're completely different circumstances and we treat them in completely different ways. I think they can be quite similar, and it's really hard. But I think also having that rug pulled from under you once makes you a more flexible, open and balanced person, because once you've had the rug pulled from you once, you're ready for it to happen again and to be okay. So I think in some ways it can be a good thing. But I guess if I was also trying to answer that person who was asking about Christianity and stuff, I think that it can be scary, but for me it was also a huge relief because I always felt with Christianity that I was living with something that was very conveniently true. Wouldn't it be great if we never died, and that there was an eternally loving God that would love you whatever you did, and that nothing really mattered because he had a plan and I didn't need to make a plan or completely understand the world? What a great idea. Shame for me, it's not true. But I think again there was a kind of freedom and relief in being able to be more honest about how I really see the world and how I really see things going down. And I think there was like as well as it being hard and painful, it was also on some levels really, really great. And I guess the same can be said for heartbreak. Did we just come round in a circle? I'm not sure. I think we did. Okay, this one is a really interesting conundrum, and one that I'd like you to join in with me on trying to work out. A friend ended our friendship because I had too many troubles and worries in my life and she couldn't deal with it anymore, which was nice, seeing as it had been so pleasant for me, sick burn. But I still miss her and I think about her. I don't want any contact anymore because I'm hurt, but do you have any tips for complicated relationships or book recommendations? So, ironically, I'm going to first talk about the empathetic attitude towards this, and then maybe some theories that might help you get through it. So, because it's ironic, because I'm going to quote a book or talk about a book called Against Empathy, which is a book all about how maybe empathy isn't really the best way forward macro scale, and often when people apply it to personal situations it can be as unhelpful as it can be helpful. So this guy's theory is that really trying to, instead of caring about somebody because they have basic human rights and you love them and you want them to do well, you have to really empathize with them to the point where you really feel how they're feeling, and you have to like know exactly what they're feeling like and be there with them, which can actually often not be helpful for the person going through it, and kind of also impossible, especially when it comes to like different identities and experiences. Like saying you know how somebody who's going through something deeply traumatic feels can just feel inaccurate, and it's not actually vital to be able to help that person. So it's a really weird one to navigate, but I don't know if I agree with all of his ideas, but I do understand this idea where there is a selfish element to wanting to or having to empathize with somebody in order to act or support them, because that's kind of like you can only act in a selfless way if you can believe that it's actually you suffering. Does that make any sense? So I feel like maybe your friend was empathizing to the point where she could no longer stand it because she was over identifying with how you were feeling, and not caring about you and putting your feelings first. So in that way I can understand her. I think that's the way we've been taught to care about people, and it's not always effective. You often always need a friend who's going to be the rational one, who can stand outside of the feelings and act on your best interests rather than getting down in the hole with you, and you know, also being numb to action because they're as upset as you are. So I can understand her, but I think also it's incredibly painful, and she can potentially just have been a bit of a dick. Like, some people only want to be in a friendship when they're getting stuff, and not when they're having to give a lot of stuff, and that's really hard to deal with. Things that I would recommend to you is a book called The Friendship Cure, which helped me with like understanding a lot of people's impulses, and it can be a lot to do with how they've grown up or how they think about the world, and just trying to understand that more, even if you can't solve it. And also Maddie Dreisbeck did an amazing podcast about being ghosted by a friend, and actually asserting how much more painful it is sometimes to be ghosted by a friend than it is to be left in the lurch by a partner, or something that society says is more important. So I'm going to leave the links to those below, and I hope they help. But mate, it's just a shit one, isn't it? I really do feel for you, because it's exactly when you don't want to be abandoned that some people can walk out, and there's no really good way of sugarcoating that. It's just a pile of shit, isn't it? Steaming shit. So if we can kind of brainstorm in the comments how that could be better for this person, then that would be amazing. Thought I'd end the video on a light one, something just to make us laugh, you know, light as clouds. How do I exist in a capitalist hellscape without destroying my humanity? When I find out, I'll let you know. This is a really hard one, because I'd like to interrogate it slightly without rambling too much. Okay, if I was trying to be positive about this, because I genuinely feel the way you do quite a lot of the time, but if I was trying to be positive about it, do we live in a capitalist hellscape? Let's find out. I actually think that a lot of what I experience in my country, at least, is that we are controlled by capitalism, yes. Are there loads of problems? Is our democracy completely inefficient to the point where, would I even call it democracy? Probably not. But I think it's actually underpinned by socialist values. People operate in a family in a very socialist way. I'm somebody who believes that humans are naturally socialist. And there's loads of instances that actually the capitalist society that we live in wouldn't function without the unpaid impulse to be socialist underneath it. In communities, a good example is maybe COVID. Obviously, we could look at the people who were selling hand sanitizer on the internet for 50 quid. But those, I think, are fewer than the people who were volunteering in the vaccination centres. So for me, when I went to the vaccination centre, which was huge, it was Derby Arena, actually. Derby Arena is huge, all staffed by volunteers. I got a bit teary. I actually think more people during the pandemic were being unsensationally socialist in a way that it didn't make the news. And I think that it's important to remember that it's not really an absolutist thing. We don't completely live in a capitalist hellscape, even though it's a really easy thing to say, and I hear it a lot on the internet. I've said it a lot myself, but I think it's more nuanced than that. So I don't think waking up every day and telling yourself you only live in a capitalist hellscape without any good people or anybody who's willing to do anything for somebody else for free or share is fair on yourself and fair and accurate, really. So while I completely don't want to discount your despair at capitalism, it's not exactly completely where we live, and that's what gives me hope. The other part of your question I'd like to interrogate a little bit is your association of humanity being lost by capitalism. Humanity doesn't have conditions to it. If you're a human, you have humanity. We've never lived in a perfect society, so I have to assume that the humans that lived under feudalism, the humans that have lived under really ineffective, inaccurate levels of communism, under dictatorships, horrible things like that, they were all humans, and humanity was present. So it's good to remember that ancestrally we've always been human on some level, however that has manifested. So I think it's kind of like, don't worry, you don't have to do anything for your humanity or to earn it or to resist anything or have a certain level of resilience to defend it. You are inherently human, and therefore you have humanity and value. And then also I found this quote in a book that I wanted to read out to you because I thought it was really interesting, and to what extent we can execute this, I don't know. But the quote made me feel hopeful, okay, so give me that. So it's this person, paraphrasing this person, and they say, "Freedom is not the end of history or an elusive goal never achievable. It is not a better nation state, however disguised as cooperative. It's not an ideal set of rules detached from the people who make them or live by them. And it is certainly not the right to own the economic, social, political and cultural capital in order to dominate others and trade their happiness in monosyllabic markets. Freedom is the process by which you develop a practice for being unavailable for servitude." Unavailable for servitude. How do we make that possible? I don't know. There's loads of nuances to that depending on who you are and where you are at in life. But if there are parts of your day or parts of your week that you can make yourself unavailable for servitude, I think that can really be a way to at least keep things a bit level, because I understand that it's stressful and I don't really have an answer, but I always think the answer is kind of interrogating the question a little bit. So I hope that gives you hope, or at least, because I may be wrong, it makes you realise what you believe, which is maybe the opposite of me, and that's totally fine. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Agony Lena. If you haven't had your fill and you'd like to watch some more videos like this one, here's my playlist on Agony Lena. This one up top, just another video that I think you might like. Try it out, see if it's for you. This video is made possible by the Gumption Club. If you have advice different to mine, because mine was probably wrong, you can leave it in the comments below. I have been Lena Norms, and you have been you, forever and always. Goodbye!